And we are joined by Bruce Harrell, who's running for mayor. So go ahead and start with a 2-minute introduction.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your endorsement, the 36th endorsement for my re-election to the City Council. Again, my name is Bruce Harrell, and I'll just give you a little background, and I hope to share it with you during the Q&A. I was born and raised in Seattle, and I was educated at the University of Washington as a political science major and as an attorney. And I think that what this mayoral race is going to be about, we have some very good people running, but I think what distinguishes my candidacy is, first of all, if you really look at the actual legislation that people have actually advanced or have done, then clearly I'm the Democrat's choice. I joined the Democratic Party when I was 18 in the 43rd, and I'm a member of 37, the PCO in the 37th. But an example would be my proposed legislation to help people who were convicted of a crime and have served their time, rehabilitated themselves, to make the employment process, to make them more employable. An example would be that I was the sponsor of the race and social justice legislation that forces the city and all of its policies to look at the lens of a person on how it affects them. In other words, whether it's a disparate impact issue, a gender issue, to make sure that we are inclusive. An example of that would be, of my work, would be the Great Student Initiative, where I made sure that kids on free and reduced lunch get access to a computer and internet access. I have friends running in this race, and I will continue my friendship with them. But the fact of the matter is that I'm the only one that really could be comfortable in a corporate boardroom or church, an athletic field, or in the roughest and toughest neighborhoods in Seattle. My leadership is very authentic. I've won 2 citywide elections because my record stands for itself. I will do extremely well during the debates because I will say I'm sort of the real deal when it comes to our democratic message. So thank you for doing the work.
Great, thank you. So now we have our 5 prepared questions, 2-minute answers to each of these. I forgot what we left off. Not that it matters. Kelly, would you like to start with me?
What is your strategy for implementing, leveraging, and perhaps improving the incentive zoning program to create diverse neighborhoods and assure affordable housing?
So, and again, I'm going to ask you to look at what happened in South Lake Union as an example. I was the one that said, how can any of us look at affordable housing advocates and support the proposal advanced by council members Burgess, Clark, Conlon, and Bagshaw. That's what I said, and through that conversation, we were able to look at the actual fees that can be charged to developers. And I support high-tech, biotech, green tech, anything with tech in it. I like that. I like those jobs, but I also support money coming into the poorest neighborhoods in our city as well, to make sure that those kids and those youth can survive and thrive as well. So I was aggressive when it came to incentive zoning, and so when we arrived at a residential rate of over $21 per square foot, I was the one that made that happen, quite honestly, through the conversation, through an open and transparent conversation. In order to create affordability, we have to create inventory. And the reason why we don't have affordable housing now is because the policies, the market dynamics took control, and we didn't do it by policy. We didn't control it by policy. So the only way to rectify it is through strong policies. And clearly, you know, the things that I said were not well received by many of the developers. And so I'm going to ask you during this race to look at who supports whom when it comes to this race. The fact is, Mayor McGinn proposed a very modest proposal of $15 per square foot. That was not an incentive for affordable housing at all. And so again, my record speaks for itself. The vote I made and the statements I made were very courageous, but I did it because I believe in affordability in Seattle. And I'll be a leader in that regard.
Number 2.
In your view, what is the city's role in assuring equal educational and achievement opportunity in Seattle public schools?
So the city has to know what its assets are. We have no business trying to take over a school district. You do not hear me bashing teachers. My daughter's in Seattle Public Schools. And she has some phenomenal teachers. I was trained in Seattle Public Schools, and out of that I was accepted to Harvard and Stanford and some great universities. I believe the kids need three things. They need tutors, resources, books, the hard stuff. They need role models, mentors. A child has to believe that they can learn. And so that's why I'm strongly into mentoring. And the city's role should be encouraging and building the infrastructure for mentoring people, bringing in professionals and other types of people into the schools. And thirdly, the teachers have to be competent, culturally competent. They have to know. Kids learn differently. My daughter learns kinesthetically, through touch, through feel, through seeing things. My son is very sedentary. He reads and he's a little bookworm. But our teachers have to be able to know how to reach all these kids, and that's why the standardized tests and some of the other tools do not work. So the city has to be the inspirational leader to tell these kids to believe in themselves again. I will convert all of our community centers into empowerment centers, and in these empowerment centers we will teach kids conflict management, self-esteem, civics. We cut out civics in class. This is teaching these kids to be good Democrats, by the way. We can do all this in our empowerment centers, and I will bring in mentors such that people can see people that may speak their language or look like them and say, you know, you need to know my story. You look at what City Year does. City Year is a phenomenal organization. They go to Emerson School. Emerson School is a school that's 95% people of color, 85% free and reduced lunch. And these mentors and these tutors come in and they're creating miracles in this school. That's what the city can do, can encourage and build the infrastructure for that kind of teaching.
Debbie, number 3.
Voters passed the parking and green spaces levy in 2008, yet we've experienced cutbacks in staffing and facilities since then. When the levy is up for renewal next year, how can it be constructed to assure voters that their tax dollars will be allocated wisely?
So I turned quickly to a page of all my levies because I have to study all of our levies that we've passed, and it's really interesting because our voters are very generous with respect to the levies. And I actually I've sat on two levy oversight committees. And what we can do, quite honestly, is, in all due respect to the levy oversight work that we do, we look at the families and education levy oversight as an example, we only scratch the surface. We only scratch the surface in terms of making sure that we are investing our money accurately and wisely. So again, I think that what we have to be able to do is we have to find a way. You'll always hear governmental people talking about, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough revenue. You'll never hear that from my administration. I'm a third-generation union person, so I don't, I could find ways to make it happen. And a good example would be what I did at City Life. On a $194 million O&M and capital base, I was able to drive out over $90 million through efficiencies, not through laying anyone off. So as it relates to the levies, it's going to take that kind of scrutiny on how we spend the money. We just can't keep going back to the voters over and over and saying, just give us the money and trust it, we'll spend it the right way. So under my leadership, and again, I was chief counsel of a major corporation. I've advised many corporations and many nonprofits and many religious institutions on how to manage their money. So I actually have a proven background in this regard. People paid for that kind of advice, and quite frankly, it's going to take that kind of oversight from a good mayor, making sure the money is spent wisely in our levy passages.
Liz, number 4.
There will likely be 2 types of election reform on the ballot this fall. District elections and public financing of campaigns. Do you support either or both of these, and why?
So let's take district elections first. I think it can work. I think district elections can work. Do I support it? I'm a little reluctant. I'm not sure on the issue. I do want it on the ballot, though. And I'll tell you the reason why people want district elections. They want to make sure the person's accountable, that it's a little bit easier to run, you can get representation. I get all that. I visited Oakland, for example, where they have a similar model, at large and by district. What I worry about, and I want the city to have an honest debate, is at what model does that sort of work, though? Is it the county council, because they are by division, or is the Olympia, who are by district, or our federal government? My concern is that I have someone from Laurelhurst arguing with someone in Rainier Valley, and I have someone in Wedgwood protecting their turf, and I don't know if the two at-larges could comment that. So I think it can work, but I wonder whether, I still wonder what the problem is we are trying to solve. And as to what I just said earlier about making sure people can get elected, well, if you look at the Constitution of the Seattle City Council, you have backgrounds of people that worked at the YMCA, people that sold insurance. Not everyone came from fancy, glamorous jobs. So I want more representation. I think all of you know I'm the only person of color on the City Council. I look at minority candidates trying to get into this industry. So I do want some balance. I want some diversity. I want women on there. I want a full gamut of different perspectives. So I want an honest debate. If the voters have by districts, we'll make it work. But I just want to make sure everyone looks at two sides of it. With respect to public finance, I'm supporting public finance. I think that's a way to get people that can't afford it. Again, I want an honest debate because these jobs are coveted jobs. They pay a great salary, you get perks. I want everyone to know what this job entails. And then when I say this job that pays a six-figure income is paid for by tax dollars, and if you want to do it that way, then vote accordingly. So I want an honest debate on the issues. But if it passes, I'll be the first one to sign up for it too.
Michael, on the mic.
Okay. What are your specific recommendations for selecting our new police chief and restoring public confidence in our police department?
So the selection process is actually a decent process. You get all the stakeholders. You get strong police advocates and members from SPMA and SPOG and community leaders. You get the public defense community and academicians, and everyone sort of weighs in, and you screen down the candidates and you get it through to the mayor to make a wise decision. I participated in that. I was the only elected leader that did that. The process is actually a good process. I think the process should start now. Many of my colleagues running would disagree. I want 10 names on my desk in November. People say, well, qualified applicants may not apply. I say incorrect. I say that a good police chief should not base his or her decision on what mayor should be. They should base it on this city and its people and the police department. So like I said, the process, this long stakeholder process, should take place right now. There should not be a delayed tactic. So a thorough process, but I'd like to see that done now. I think your second part of your question was what?
Restoring public confidence.
Public confidence is very easy. I was the only elected leader, only one in the city that, for example, when John T. Williams was shot, I saw the video several times, and I said that was an unlawful shooting. That was a taking of a life, and his life was as precious as yours and mine. You restore confidence by making sure that you catch these officers doing all the right things, and they do so many great things. You don't hear me police bash. But when there's something that was grossly wrong, you denounce it, and you say, that is not our best and our finest. I have too many friends that are in the police force who serve every single day to bash them. That is not. My job is to give them clear instruction. And I will tell you, our mayor has failed miserably on giving them clarity of instruction. And that's all they want. And you restore trust by making sure that they are in a position where they can say, I made a mistake and I'm learning. They become a learning organization, as Peter Senge would suggest.
Great. So now we'll move on to follow-up questions from the executive board. People can ask whatever they want. These are 1-minute answers. And Evan and then Clayton.
So I'm interested in sort of the interplay between, especially as a council member currently, the interplay between the mayor's office and the city council. How would you sort of address some of the challenges that we've had with that tension and sometimes sort of lack of cooperation between those two offices?
So our mayor should be the leader at giving praise and not casting blame. And our tensions are really uncalled for. That personally, I've tried very hard to be collaborative, to be open and transparent, and I continue to do that. We'll take the mayor's relationship with the city attorney, for example. To hear that going back and forth, I disagree with policy calls from the city attorney's office all the time. But I disagree respectfully, and I treasure the relationship. And I will tell you that this is where I think Mayor Mike McGinn has failed us the most. He's failed us most where we needed him the most, and that is making sure he listens and values opinions around him. I don't think that occurs. And the only way it does occur is showing that kind of leadership. So again, he fights to be right. I'd rather have someone fight for righteousness.
Clayton?
I wonder how you would handle the intervention from the Department of Justice on the one hand, and on the other hand, I wonder what your ideas are for changing training and changing culture within the police force in a more positive way.
Sure. So first of all, I would not have settled the Department of Justice settlement agreement. As an attorney, I thought that was almost reckless. The reason being is that the facts that we stipulated to was that we committed unlawful force 20% of the time. They would not disclose to us what cases they were reviewing, and you never negotiated an agreement at all unless you know what facts you're agreeing upon. And I thought that sent a message to our police department that we don't have you back, we don't trust you, and I would rather have settled through a process of discovery exactly what level of unreasonable force we used. The second part of your question was training. So we have great training. We have crisis intervention training, street skills training, so we'll keep doing this training. But we need cameras. We need body cameras, and I'll tell you why. And I'm the only one that consistently advocates for this, because at the end of the day, I want to know what happened. I want to see what happened in the alleyway, and we can learn from that. That's how you actually create a high-performing organization. So, you know, there's an old saying in training, I was going to say, animals are trained and people learn. And I could elaborate on why they say that in the training world. I should do a lot of training, and a different question perhaps.
First, by way of disclosure, I'm supporting Councilor Harrell. The question I have is a similar question I asked earlier, and that is, you have a diverse career. Over the course of your career, what's the single most important thing you feel you've done? What's the biggest accomplishment you've had?
I would say, actually getting elected my first time on city council out of a race of 5 was the biggest thing I accomplished, because I'd never run for office before. And then once elected, I passed what's called the Race and Social Justice legislation. And the reason why that was important to me was, to be very honest with you, I'm biracial. And I cringe when people used to talk about race. I grew up in an environment in the 60s and 70s where I was watching blacks and whites and doing all this stuff, and Asians were somewhere in there, and the Latinos, and I hated that stuff. But I realized that we have to get beyond that, and I need to get it out there, because if you said, what's race? For me, I got to give you this long-winded answer. And so when I passed that, I was proud, because the city understood my message that it really was going beyond race. And the city warmed up to it, that it's our human experiences as human beings that's most important whenever you talk about race. It's not this, it's this. So I think that was my most significant accomplishment.
I was wondering if you could speak to our homeless youth and the ideas you might have to reduce our numbers, since they seem to be staying static.
You know, I recently read some materials down in Portland, and I guess Portland has a real problem with homeless youth. I think now 1 out of every 26 kids or so are homeless. And so you got kids going to school, even at my daughter's school at Cleveland High School. So I have recently come into a whole new appreciation for how tragic this is. So again, from our Human Services Department, and this is something that Mayor Ginn has done, I think, right, that he did ask us, and the council has done right with him, to prioritize in our homeless work children, to make sure that there are no children. And so it takes resources, and so we did a significant amount of resources to it to find out who these kids are, where their parents are, how do we get them to school. You know, some kids are sneaking in schools and sleeping. So at the end of the day, I think we're putting more and more money into it, prioritizing the kids, and that's what's going to take, make sure that the providers get the money to remedy it. I ran out of time, and I want to give you a specific solution about certain kinds of houses. It's a tough one.
We're going to have time probably just one more question.
So in preparing to be mayor and envisioning yourself as mayor and assessing your skill set and your background, Where do you see your biggest weakness? What do you anticipate being the biggest challenge to what you know how to do and what you're strong at, and what's your weakness? Where do you anticipate problems?
So, that's a great question. So, my weakness will be, quite honestly, people never know how to quite peg me. They know that I can read a balance sheet and profit and loss statements. I was chief counsel of a major corporation. They know I have a passion for social justice and that I have litigated matters, civil rights matters. And so is he a person a little on the right, a fiscal conservative, or is he a social justice person to the far left? People like stereotyping folks. I'm a third generation union person. So my weakness would be I'm hard to understand and hard to pigeon down. I've had a multi-dimensional career as well, doing corporate work and pro bono civil rights work. Sometimes people like to know exactly the brand of the candidate. Well, that's also a strength too, I might add, because I want that kind of mayor to have to be accepted in all different communities. But again, everyone else sort of is tagged as a certain kind of person, and sometimes politics are funny that way. People want to be tagged.
All right, so we're about out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
Sure. Thank you again for your prior endorsement. I recognize fully that you know other candidates and they're good candidates. I will tell you that my message is resounding throughout the city. It was very clear in the last couple of debates that my message resonated the loudest and the clearest. Some stuff you can't fake. I wanted Mayor McGinn to succeed very well. I gave him public praise on many occasions, but he has been a great disappointment. I have the academic credentials, the professional credentials, and the commitment to change this city. So I'm asking for your support and your belief in me.
Great. Thank you very much.